Well, hello and welcome to the Finding Traction podcast. Now, I'm sure you're aware, especially if you have young kids, of that super annoying song in the Disney movie Frozen, the song called Let It Go. The lyrics are super hokey and dumb, but there's one line in the song that goes like this: let it go, let it go. Turn away and slam the door. You know, most of us would go, if only it was that easy when it came to walking away from sexual compulsions with porn and other similar behaviors. So today on Finding Traction, we explore this concept of letting go. Let's get into it.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, I heard this story about how farmers in India would catch monkeys that were destroying their crops. You know, rather than shooting the monkeys, which would violate their moral code, they devised this method to humanely trap the monkeys. Apparently, they take a coconut and cut a small hole in it, just big enough so that the monkey can slide its hand through. Then inside the coconut, they place a banana and tie the coconut to the side of a tree. Now, when the monkey comes up, it smells the banana and it sticks its hand into the coconut to grab the banana. But when the monkey tries to pull its hand out, it can't because its hand is clenched in a fist holding the banana and it does not fit out of the small hole. Now, caught in the predicament, the monkey can be captured because it refuses to let go of the banana and escape the farmer. Now, I haven't tried to verify that story, and I've never been to India, and maybe some monkeys are more stubborn than others. I would probably put myself in that category. But, you know, it really is a great word picture of how hard it is to let go of something we really want, even when we say we want something else. You see, most of us who are starting on the road to recovery, we will notice this funny dynamic that takes place in our recovery. You know, at one level, we have this determination, like the song, to slam the door and let go of things like, for us, it's porn in our lives. You know, especially if we're coming out of a bad season of binging and are full of regret. Perhaps we're experiencing painful consequences of being found out by someone we love, or we're now at risk of losing something that we value. And so you go, well, just let it go, right? We obviously want to move past this. Yeah, I get it. Yet at the same time, when we actually go to let go of porn, something deep inside of us hesitates. Can you identify with that? I mean, I sure can. So how does this play out? You know, how do people try to not let go all the time saying that they want to let go? Let me give you a few things that I've noticed or seen in letting go, but not really letting go. Here's one: keeping stashes just in case. I don't know if you heard about the guy who successfully sued his parents because they threw away his $30,000 porn collection. Now, there was a guy that was not ready to let go. But you know what? Many of us have, or we can think of, you know, these secret places or stashes, or sometimes people have carefully curated and collected stashes and pockets of stuff that have meant so much to us. And we really don't want to fully let that go. You know, it's kind of like, well, if I ever went back, that would be there. I don't want to go back, but if I ever did, it's there just in case. Here's another one. That first one might seem a little crazy, but the second one I think is maybe a little more common than I see. These are where we keep open links or devices. It could be, well, I don't really plan to use those, but I mean, it's not a problem right now. And sure, that back room is a way that I can get in and look at it, and I know where it is, but I don't plan on going back there. But yet, if you ask me to get rid of that link or get rid of that device, or, it's like there's something in them that goes, well, it's not a problem. I'm okay. So that's maybe more that I see working with guys. Here's another one where we practice what I call mental what-if games. This is where we kind of play a little bit of an escape fantasy or what-if fantasies where you say, what would I do if my marriage ended, or if my wife passed away, or how would I deal with life then? And, maybe then I would go back to porn because I wouldn't have what I have right now. And we play these mental games, and all of that does really is it keeps us from going, well, no, this is not a completely new thing in my life. It's true right now for me, but if my situation changed for the worse, I could always go back to it. And I find sometimes when we play those what if scenarios, it actually leaves an open door in our mind. Here's another one that I would say is a way we say we want to let go, but we don't really let go. And this is where we practice the old risk management approach. We say things, I'm not going to go back and do hardcore porn or, risky sexual behaviors, but there's a lot of, softer sites or things that are more acceptable that I can get away with. YouTube, Facebook are great examples of people who take a certain, I'm not looking at porn. I'm just endlessly scrolling and looking for that buzz on those softer, tamer sites. It's almost like trying for a heroin addict to take methadone and say, I'm not doing heroin, and I'm just going to do methadone in case. I'm going to wean myself off porn by looking at something which is tamer. And we go, well, that doesn't ever work. All that does is prime us up for the heavier stuff, the harder stuff. And here's the last one I want to talk about, which is a great way to not let go all the while we're saying, I want to let go. And that's where we compare ourselves to where we were before. We say, I'm sure I'm regularly breaking my recovery, but boy, compared to where I used to go or how much time I used to spend on this, man, I am in a much better place. And isn't it about progress, right? It's about progress, not perfection, right? And, and that is a great recovery saying. I've used that many times with guys. It's just not one that should be applied in this context when we're using it to not let go. I mean, those are some of the ways I've seen guys struggle with letting go. I've seen myself using some of those things to not let go, to kind of settle for closing the door part way or most way, but not really slamming it shut and deadbolting it. By the way, there's a fancy term for that. It's called ambivalence. I looked up the word and it means this: the state of having mixed feelings or contradictory ideas about something or someone. In other words, we're kind of like the monkey. We don't want to be captured, but we don't want to let go of the banana. Now, there's a penis pun intended for you there. So, why do we experience this ambivalence? Why do we struggle with letting go when we know that letting go is the very thing we need to do, the necessary thing for us to do? And you might come up with your own reasons. I'm just going to throw a few reasons by you that I think kind of fit into this and why we struggle with such ambivalence in this area. Here's the first one. I think it's hard for us to see ourselves navigating life without our go-to. I mean, porn has been our go-to. We've used it for so many things. When we were bored, it picked us up. It gave us excitement in life. We used porn for stress relief, or for an escape when things felt overwhelming, or for a reward when things were going really well and we'd worked so hard or had a great week and we wanted to give ourselves a little cherry on top for the week. It was our go-to. And without our go-to, well, we're just not sure where we're going to go to, right? I mean, sure, we don't want the bad stuff that porn brought or brings into our lives, but letting go of porn feels like we're leaving a huge hole in our life. We'll get back to those holes a little bit later. Number 2, it's hard for us to find the same degree of a high in our regular life. You know, if you ask people to rank, experiences in regular life, going to work, those kind of things, the regular stuff, most of us say, well, it's a 3, it's a 2, it's a 3, it's a 4. And then occasionally, you hear this amazing song or go to this great movie and you go, man, that was amazing. That was incredible. And you might hit a 7 or an 8. And then you hear that song a few more times. And then it kind of goes back to a 6 or a 5. You have this amazing meal, this amazing restaurant, it's a 5, it's a 6, it's a 7, depending whether they got the steak just right or the burger. Red Robin is my weakness. If they got the onion, straw things on the burger just right. I mean, man, that's like a 7 for me. And to be honest, most of us feel like there's only one thing in life that came close to giving us a 10, and that was getting lost in porn. And anyone who's, looked at or done any reading on what's going on in your brain, it's because of all the chemicals that are being released. Now, I never did cocaine. I never did crystal meth. It's not on my to-do list, but I hear that can work as well. And forgive me for all single guys that are listening to this, but let me just say this. Even normal sex to the same person, it's a great thing, but it doesn't compare to porn. I don't know if that's what U2 meant when they sang years ago, better than the real thing. But, that's why many married people still struggle with porn. Why, if you're single and you think, well, all I have to do is get married and then I'll be better, the answer, it's not true. Because porn is better than the real thing at one level. Sure, committed sexual love is deeply satisfying, but it doesn't give you the same chemical adrenaline shot. It's maybe why people who have a long-standing porn addiction, they often describe themselves as settling into a sort of anhedonia. And that's just a fancy psychological term for the ability to experience pleasure in much else in life, because nothing else gives them quite the same high. And as a result, their pleasure world becomes smaller and smaller. All I'm saying is this. It may be another reason why it's hard for us to let go. I mean, sure, there's pain involved and it's brought all these negative consequences, but it also gave us this great pleasure sensation. So, for those reasons and maybe some that are uniquely yours, I would say I think that could explain why it's difficult for us to let it go. It may explain our ambivalence. You say, I guess we're just hooped then, right? Well, no, I want to throw some things by you that I think can be helpful for you on your journey in recognizing this struggle in recovery. Here's the first thing that I would say. Number 1, recognize the hesitation, but act anyways. Remove all your stashes, all your open devices and your weak links. Let your stronger self act before your weaker self goes, hey, where did that go? I love the phrase, don't think your way into a new way of acting, act your way into a new way of thinking. So for me, that's just important. I just go, you know what? I'm just going to recognize that at this stage, I'm ambivalent. I'm going to act anyways. Number 2, beg, borrow, and steal from other people's conviction when ours wanes. That determination, that desire to let go, it wanes, and it seems to come and go, and it will. You might go, today I recognize that I don't really want to let it go. But here's the cool thing that I've seen in working with guys, and particularly working in our coaching groups. What happens is almost like we borrow courage from each other. We borrow resolve from each other. There's this great recovery saying that says this: we can do what I can't. And I've had so many guys come into group and they say, you know what, I came in here really wobbly, but something I heard or listening to someone's story has just given me a new sense that I can do this thing. So I would say that is a huge help when we're struggling with letting it go. Number 3, recognize that your old habits did meet certain needs. Acknowledge it and say goodbye. Porn was maybe like an old girlfriend, this old toxic girlfriend that caused way too much drama and pain. If you're a woman listening to this, maybe it's an old boyfriend. And you just recognize, you know what? There were things that were good in that relationship, but it's time for me to have, that Dear Jane conversation. Actually, it is you. It's not me. Doug Weiss has this great exercise in one of his books that I've had guys use. It's called the goodbye letter, where you write a letter to porn. You acknowledge the good things or the ways that it met your needs, but then you essentially say goodbye to it and you purpose to meet those needs in different ways. It's like writing your dear porn letter. That's actually been really helpful for some of the guys that I've worked with. Talking about that, number 4 is this: recognizing that leaving porn means you now have holes in your life. It's almost like we're a block of Swiss cheese. We've got all these holes. And now it's time to fill them with new care strategies, self-care strategies, new pursuits, new ways to reposition our lives where we can begin to meet those needs in different ways. And lastly, it's this: recognize that old pleasure and joy ranking system, it will reset itself over time. I had this conversation with one of the guys in my groups, and we were talking. I think it was a one-on-one conversation. We were discussing this idea of the 1 to 10 thing, and the idea that sometimes it feels that nothing quite compares to the number 10 of porn. But this is what he said, and he was asking me about my recovery, which has now been in the process of over years. And this is what we started talking about. He says, it's interesting. Over time, as porn plays a smaller and smaller role in my life, initially it felt like everything else was just blah. It was a 3, it was a 4. He says, but over time it's interesting. What were 3s and 4s and 5s now feel like 5s and 6s and 7s. I can now take more pleasure in the simple pleasures of life. And interestingly enough, now as porn behaviors become more and more in the distant and smaller in the rearview mirror, they don't seem like 10s anymore. Sure, there's always a bit of nostalgia, a little bit like an alcohol remembering their favorite malt whiskey, but it is losing, its driving appeal. I love that talk. For me, that's tremendously encouraging. So let me just say this in closing. I'd love to connect with you if something that I've said has been helpful. You can email me at bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com, or you can go to the website bandofbrothers.care, or contact me about getting a one-on-one coaching session or joining one of the groups. Sometimes I had people ask me, because they know my background is obviously out of the church, and they say to me, are the groups that you lead, like your regular guys group, are they like super religious or preachy or whatever? And I say, absolutely not. Now, there's times where we may introduce a spiritual principle, but our groups are made up of all different guys. I mean, and that's what's been so cool. I got guys from all walks of life. I got Christians, I've got atheists and agnostics, I've got gay, I've got straight, I've got Democrats and Republicans, I've got anti-vaxxers and triple vaxxers and vapors and non-vapors, and most football fans. I just don't have Eagles fans. That's just a bridge too far for me. I love what Matt Dobschuetz says. He says, all you have to be is a motivated guy who wants to quit looking at porn. It's a great line. And yes, I am just kidding on the Eagles fans, of course. Right now, they need all the sympathy and support they can get these days. So I recognize that. And along with the Giants and Redskins, Washington fans, sorry. So anyways, here's to letting go. Have a great day. I won't play the Disney song for you, but till next time, here's to new freedom and joy in your life. Vern signing out.